Speak.
There we go. What's up, Benfica Nation? Welcome to episode 115 of Mr. Benfica. I am your host, the Mr. Mike Agustino, and today I've got a very special guest with me back again for the second year in a row for our little annual kind of state of the club, end of the season commiserating session from Benfica After 90. It is Mario Mota. What's up, Mario? How you doing?
Good. After this season, if you do the side by side, you'll see a lot more gray hair. You know that's what Benfica does to you when your expectations are shattered the way it was. But yeah, I've aged faster than I ever have after this year.
Yeah, this was like two seasons mixed into one. Like we talk about it, and really last season ended and the next one started almost the next day. There was like no time in between. So this season felt extra long, and then you get these kind of results, and I mean, it makes it stretch out even longer, I think. I think all of us that cover this team, that talk about this team, there was a reoccurring like message of how just we couldn't wait for this thing to be over towards the end. You know, it just wouldn't end. And it was just suffering on top of suffering. And then we made a little run, and you start to get a little bit hopeful, and then the cup final comes and kicks you in the nuts. And, and that's basically what that game was, huh?
Yeah, very, very painful in a sense, especially when you're thinking you're going to pull through and you're going to make it, and it just at least get something to cheer about this season. But yeah, we get no love this year.
It was unreal. I mean, I thought for sure that we were going to show up in that final because we had looked good for 6 or 7 weeks. Well, you know, good relatively speaking for 6 or 7 weeks, and Braga were on the slides, and maybe that should have been a sign that we were in for some trouble.
No kidding. And it's just, and leading up to this game, you kind of look at the form between the two teams. We've been hot and cold, and there's a few glimpses of hope, kind of obviously the Sporting game, even though we almost blew that one. Guimarães game was shockingly good given the players we rested. And then you look at Braga, which had completely collapsed. And you're just thinking like, okay, you know, if there was a time to face Braga this season, it wasn't during the point where they're potentially going for a Champions League spot. It was during a point where it looked like their season was over. And man, did that go the other way.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that match, and I forced myself to watch it again a second time. And it's even worse the second time because what are we trying to do is what I was trying to figure out in the second match. I mean, in the second viewing. We go down 10 men. Okay, that is what it is. We've talked about that call. We've all talked about it. Everyone's talked about it. And I don't know where VAR was in that situation because that's exactly what VAR is supposed to prevent from happening. But the referee calls it a red card. You know, we shouldn't be surprised at this point. What I don't understand after that, Mario, is why we're pressing so high down a man for the rest of the match. That red card happens, first of all, because we're pressed really high. We have 3 slow central defenders. We play with the 3-man back line. Slow players. Why are we giving them 40 yards of space to chase a ball down and make it a foot race between their striker and our goalkeeper? We saw what happens. Regardless of whether or not it was a good call, it wasn't, but we set ourselves up for that to happen, in my opinion. And I freeze framed it when I was watching it the second time. And I got to say, I have to thank your wife for helping me find a stream that day because TVE could not handle the bandwidth. They didn't have the bandwidth to handle the amount of people watching the game, I don't think, because it continued to buffer and buffer and buffer. And then I watched it in on demand like 2 hours after, and it was perfectly fine. But I froze the screen, and our defensive line is set up halfway into the middle third. not in our defensive third. So that's always going to turn into a race. And do you really want Jan Vertonghen in a foot race with anybody? I don't even think he was fit for that match, to be honest. I think he was rushed in, and the reason he played central and not left center, I think, is because he didn't have the strength and the fitness to chase balls down. I think that's why he played in the center and not Moratu, which was the opposite of what we saw at Guimarães that seemed to work well against Guimarães. And again, it becomes a foot race. Helton has to come out. A lot of people are hard on him, but he was left in a real bad situation there, because if he doesn't come out for that, it's a breakaway, and then he gets dribbled, and they're going to say, oh, he should have came out for it. He comes out for it. He doesn't win the foot race, but he literally pulls his arm out of the way to try to avoid any contact.
There's almost, we could spend a ton of time on that side, but really there was really no main contact, and the contact that did happen was while the guy was already falling, like he throws himself and he nicks the arm. It's all those things, but I did find this is one of the reasons why Helton took Audacy's spot is the ability to kind of run out, because that was a bad call. It was the right play. He did the right thing.
Right.
But then when we go down a goal, it's the wrong run from Odie. Now, I got to say, Odie had an amazing second half. Great shot stopper. He did amazing saves that he did. But some of his decision-making running out, and part of the need to have a keeper to run out is, like you're pointing out, you got these slow center backs that were getting beat. Otamendi's a great center back, but same thing. He doesn't have the legs to kind of run down the line. And I got to say, even though we got the short end of the stick with the call, this game was lost because of the substitutions and the choices that were made after that. It's one of those things where, as we kind of progressed throughout the game, we just weren't making the right decisions as a team. And then really, to me, it was that series of extra changes right after halftime in like the mid 50-minute mark, 57 or whatever time it was. We do 3 substitutions, and I don't mind the idea of Rafa, because you need to inject some pace from the breakaway. I found Seth wasn't doing much. He was kind of lost out there. And Darwin kind of made sense to come on. Again, a guy that really has a lot of pace, and he tracks back, and there's several times we caught him on the defensive side catching some balls. He did good in that sense. But to me, the biggest mistake was Nuno Tavares. Diogo is an attacking winger that was playing a fullback type of position. Tavares, just to me, it wasn't the type of play. Like, pretty much at that point, we're down, we're losing, and you added a more defensive player. Like, you need to kind of go for this game. And I didn't agree with that move there. Everton wasn't having a terrible game. Again, I think Everton has the potential to create some opportunities. And to be honest, I don't think he had a bad game, but I was petrified of Taarabt being on, because Taarabt loses so many balls in the middle of the park. And when you're down a guy, I was kind of, he actually had like a decent game, but I was kind of more worried about his, the amount of passes he might miss, because sometimes he tries to get too cute with the ball. And when you're down a guy, it can really cost you.
Yeah. And I guess I'm going to backtrack to the first substitution first, because I thought Taarabt was coming off.
Yeah, it makes sense. It'd make a lot more sense if he went off.
I also, after the fact, saw a lot of people say that they thought that it was going to be one of the center backs and we were going to go to 4-4-1. That also makes a lot of sense to me, because that's also an easy transition to make. And I know PZ is not the most popular player in the side, and I find myself this season somehow defending him, where last season I was all over him. This season I find myself kind of coming to his aid at times, because I think it's gone so far in the other way, the way we view him. But you mentioned there that Everton didn't have the best of games. Part of Everton's emergence at the end was his connection with Pizzi. They were combining really well. And I think in taking Pizzi out, first of all, you lose probably your most efficient player in the final third. He is the guy that typically delivers that final pass or takes the shot that finds its way into the back of the goal. So I thought we lost a lot in that sense. We lost our danger going forward in taking him out. And again, you leave Weigl with just Adel Taarabt to help him defensively, which you can say what you want about Taarabt, and I know I've been critical of him, and a lot of people have chimed back at me. But I don't think anyone can defend his defensive game and his tactical game from a defensive standpoint. And once you go down a man, you have to think you're going to be defending more than you're going to be attacking. You're going to have to pick your spots more so than try to. And it looked like we tried to have the ball instead.
And even on the Pizzi note, I know he didn't have a great year, and rightfully so. He got a lot of criticism. The last month and a bit, like you said, Everton was showing up a lot more. You're seeing a lot more items clicking on the side, which is nice, including Pizzi. Pizzi was doing quite well. And here's the guy, and this is why I'm trying to get in George Jesus's head to just what is his thought process? You have a guy that got rested last match.
Right.
You're going to be playing against 10 men, meaning you got to work a little harder, and you want to keep your most rested players. And so you made Pizzi the captain. By the way, we've had Otamendi the captain. We've had the revolving armband. So you go, Pizzi, you're rested. You're my man. You're the captain. Get on. I need to rip out the weakest link because we're down 10 men. You're the weakest link. Get out. And I just, to me, it goes to the whole pulse on the squad. What does George Jesus actually understand what he's working with at the moment? Like, does he have a good read on these players? Does he have faith in them? Maybe it's just a case that he doesn't have faith that Pizzi would be able to do it, because Pizzi has at times also disappeared. But it's I would say this,
he doesn't have the lungs for especially being down 10 men. I can see that argument.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you're comparing him to Tarat, also he rarely has the lungs also.
Right,
So
exactly.
my thing, if I'm Pizzi and I'm thinking, if I'm staying at Benfica, I got a manager that doesn't believe in me. You know, it's not saying this is supposed to be a morale building type game. In a sense, you're there to win it, but I just feel the decision pre-game setting it up to even like what happened with Guimarães, like the fact that supposedly Verissimo had a light injury he was playing with,
right,
which got exacerbated that game. I'm like, you could have benched him. You could have played with a different setup. It was a point. Like, we did a lot of rotation that game. Why would you play the guy that potentially is riding his luck, right?
Yeah, right.
It was also interesting to hear about Darwin, that he had been playing with a slight injury for a bit or wherever it is, and he's going for knee surgery.
He gets a scope as soon as the season ends.
But the thing is, for me, again, it goes to the whole idea of, okay, so if you know Darwin is playing with an injury, likely he's going to need surgery, because they knew this. You had Gonzalo Ramos come off the bench and do some really good things. He came out this on this presser saying, see, I knew all we had to do is just wait it out, get this guy. He now knows the rhythm of this game. He knows the rhythm of this team. I proved it to you, so much so that I'm not even going to put him on the bench. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, exactly. It's just decision-making into this game was just what your bench is, things of sort. You're going to put a guy on the bench like Darwin that potentially might not be 110%. Right. And bench the guy that you just ran on a rant saying how much he's ready to play now. He knows the system. You know what I mean? He doesn't even get included. So it's the planning into the game, the before the game, the during the game. I think it was just falls heavily on George Jesus as a manager. I know the red card highly impacted it. It completely tilted this game. It could have been a completely different story. But how you also plan for a game, prep for it, and mentally have the squad ready is how you get through these tough periods where you get down to 10 men, right?
Right, exactly. And again, we saw a year ago when we played in the cup final, we went up a man and it made no difference. They adjusted. Yeah. We did not adjust. It looked like the built-in excuse was there. Some people are going to say, well, and I know both you and I have had arguments with some of the same Twitter people about this. And, they see it as, oh, we were just robbed. We did everything right. But no, we didn't do everything right. I mean, the team wasn't set up right. Okay. I was a huge proponent of a 3-man center back line, mainly because of the lack of pace. But when you're down to only 3 healthy center backs, do you want to have all of them on the pitch at the same time? I mean, what if another injury had happened? You would have had to make 2 or 3 changes, move people around just to continue to struggle through the match. It wouldn't have helped in any way.
Yeah, and it goes back to the last few games where, the Liga was done. We're not getting second place. We're not losing third place. There was a point for the last couple of weeks that we knew it was pretty much a done game. And like you said, we're running with 2 veterans at the back that could get injured in Verissimo. And Verissimo came off like playing like a workhorse in Latin America, all the way down the Copa. And then he's got tons of minutes on him. He's only half season with us. And you're burning these guys hard. And you got Murat, and you don't play him at all. You don't do anything with them. You were forced into that situation. As a manager, you should start rotating a little bit, hopefully save some of these legs, and
Right.
B, getting these guys into a system, get these guys into a rhythm. I thought that's what the whole point of Gonzalo Ramos coming off the bench recently was for, and then just not to include him. It's just stuff like that I'm questioning the thought process going into the last month. You know what I mean?
And we saw a great combination between Darwin and Gonzalo Ramos. We saw them combine for 3 goals in a 10-minute span, right? Ferrich gets credit for one of them because he kicked it off the defender's face into the goal. But we saw things happen when those two are on the pitch together. And then we never saw it again. I thought, okay, against Sporting, they'll get a couple, 20 more minutes. I know the game went a different way than we would have expected, going up 4-1 and then it becoming 4-3. So you don't have the same time and the same opportunity maybe to make the attacking combinations you might have wanted. But the Guimarães match, that was a blank slate. Why didn't we see more from the things we didn't see throughout the season to be more prepared for this cup final? I don't know what the preparation was for this cup final. It looked like they just showed up, they put the players on the pitch and they played the way you would in a Sunday league.
Yeah, and it gets to the whole, what do we do next now with this team, right? Because it isn't just I understand Sporting was big. We had Nacional also before Sporting, which we could have played around with. It was pretty much for the last month and a bit. It was after he drew Porto, right? So
right, second place was gone at that point.
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know. I kind of go now. It's one of the things that's most disappointing is what are we going to do with this team? We need still quite a bit of wholesale changes. I've ranted before, and some people, get on my case about it. But you got Rui Vitaria's worst year. You got that final year by Lage, which was pretty brutal, and rightfully so. People were agitated, angry at that final season with Lage and the final season with Rui Vitaria.
Right.
Rightfully so. Like the season where he had a full year. So let's say before he got fired, he did bad with firing, but before even the firing happened, that year with the 0 points Champions League, this and that, you got the Liga, and Jorge Jesus did worse than Rui Vitaria.
Yeah, exactly.
On a gutted squad with no reinvestments. You had Lage, same thing, almost same exact outcome. In terms of that horrific last year, was, we were on there saying how bad of a year it was. The squad repeatedly gutted, no investments. And now you get a ton of investments. I expect a big improvement, bare minimum, a little improvement. And there is no change in the actual results. Like the actual amount of draws and losses, I think the only difference was Lage lost one more game and Jorge Jesus drew 3 more games or whatever it is. But
when you compare the investment level, that's the same.
Yeah, and you kind of look at what did and people go, oh, he has to rebuild. I'm like, Lage took this squad and won the title. Take away João Felix and take away a few other guys. He lost a few guys, but there's a core of a title-winning team. We need a few pieces. Yeah. Last year, I think everyone and their mother said it was the players gave up on Lage. It was blatantly clear they gave up. The same players that gave up on Rui Vitaria. Right. So there's a core issue at this team. And Jorge Jesus gets a blank slate, gets a ton of talent, like a lot of players. And you kind of look at, okay, who are the guys that people were complaining about? They're complaining about the likes of Almeida, Rafa, Pizzi, and a few other ones that just weren't. And what does he go in? He goes, okay, Rafa, Almeida, Pizzi, you're my guys. Plus, I'm going to add a few guys. Guys like Florentino that showed that good box-to-box defensive mid kind of thing, and other guys, let's get rid of those. I don't know. I look at the decision-making in the offseason and everything else. It was quite tough, right? And it's just it's a tough pill to swallow because I don't know where you go from here. It's like I see potential Veríssimo. He has loads of raw talent. Everton, a Golden Boot winner in Latin and the Copa Copa America, right? Yeah. Talented guy. We have talent. There's talent on this squad. It's just, and you see the potential. Some of the final games of the season, we saw some of the clicking happening where you're like, okay, you know what, man, with the right, get rid of this guy, add this guy, forget Gabriel. If we can get some more, bring Florentino back from loan, whatever you got to do, just a few tweaks, and it feels like this team can win, domestic titles and put up a decent fight, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. It's a very tough situation to be in, and it's tough to kind of right now look at the club and to have one of the worst seasons on record after the biggest spend on record, to have no one Like everyone's pointing the finger at the fans, pointing the finger at COVID, pointing the finger at every excuse.
Except where it really should be pointed.
There is no like George Jesus, like there should be some kind of right now a State of the Union saying George Jesus could be like, hey, this is where the wink links were. I don't have a good defensive coordinator or assistant manager, or here's a sporting director. There's someone's head that should be on the line. There should be some kind of like responsibility taking, right? Like right now, it's like the president washes his hands, George Jesus washes his hands, or Costa washes his hands. Everyone's like, and just all I see on BTV is finger pointing at the others.
Oh, goodness, like, or defend it. You saw that. I can't even stand the guy anymore. That Pedro Guerra go on this week and slam Noronha Lopes for an interview in record. And it's, I mean, that apparently seems to be what his role in the club is, which is to slander anybody who says anything about the president.
Yeah, not anything about Benfica.
No,
just
about
Luis
the president.
As soon as something negative is about Vieira, BTV goes on overtime with this guy ranting, defending him.
Yeah.
As soon as we're losing, or there's other things that are happening that are not good for Benfica, or Benfica is getting slaughtered by referee decisions, or the no fans in the stands. Like, I'll say this much. I despise Pinto Costa. I saw a thing from Pinto Costa this past weekend chastising the Liga and the government for not only the European final being in Porto, but the fact that he went, it's like, by the Dragão and the Pavão, or wherever it was their thing, there was a concert or some music event with 2,000 attendees.
Right.
And he's like, and you have Pinto Costa coming out hard, naming politicians and stuff. I'm like, this is the biggest club, man. If Benfica goes against the mayor of Lisbon, if Benfica goes against whoever is in power in Portugal, I don't know the political parties right now, to be honest, who's in charge of what. But if these clubs target them, and I'm not saying you want to make these things political, but it's like, let's call a spade a spade. You're allowing like 20,000 plus people to watch a football match. You're allowing people in concerts. You're allowing people at venues. You're allowing people for everything but anything related to Benfica or the football clubs in general. Yet there's silence from our club. They're not like, the fans are irritated, and it's like, you're supposed to represent us. You're the chairman. You're the president. You're the board of directors. You're the guys on BT. You're supposed to kind of fight the good fight. You might not win it. And so when I see our rivals, the guy I despise, doing that fight, I'm like, why aren't we on the microphone? It's a lack of leadership. And but you have Pedro Guerra, you'll have him on BTV slandering Lopes because your leader got offended.
Or Ricardo Solnado, who's a great guy.
He's no kidding. Hey.
It's like, come on. Well, let's look at João's question here. I have it on the screen. He's watching on YouTube, or his point. He makes a good point. He says, JJ doesn't even have a best formation. That's how bad we are prepared for Champions League qualifiers. And I'm going to be honest. I have very little expectation of qualifying for Champions League right now. We have a squad in disarray. We have players, a bunch of them going to international duty this summer. And as we know, we have some going into surgery. Who knows what we're going to look like in early August or late July when we have to play these qualifiers. And now we find out the train goes right through via Rui Vitória, most likely. If not in the first qualifying round,
there's a chance that could happen. That would be, like, and there's rumors that we might sell Gabriel to
Spartak,
Spartak, because he was a signing of Vitória's, I think it was, or Vitória wanted him in the first place. And I look at it and just like there's a bunch of other potential teams we might face, but it just seems like fate would get us that direction. I don't want that. I really don't, because for me, and here's the thing that's agitating, and people will get on my case about this. It's some people then, say, oh, Benfica can't win the Champions League because it's all about the spending power and talent that these mega clubs like Chelsea and City have. And they make these arguments why Europe is futile. But then when Benfica faces PAOK or any of the other potential opponents we might face, we are the Manchester City. No offense to, Gnac and all these other PAOKs and whatever else you're going to grab out of that woodwork. We will have potentially twice the budget, twice the value of talent. It's just it's not 3 times in some cases, 4 times in other cases. And so you can't make the argument saying Luis Vieira is not at fault for us not doing, winning the Champions League, because obviously I understand that that would be extremely challenging, ridiculously challenging. But at the same time, you can't defend Luis Vieira and say, oh, it's not his fault that we don't make it through these qualifiers. I'm like, you're the president, man. You got to align this. If you don't know anything about the sport, you get a good sporting director. If the results aren't the same way, you fire the sporting director, get another one. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, you just got to be able to
run any other business.
Exactly.
When you don't know how to do something, you get someone who does.
Yeah, and right now all the club is surrounded with, and you see it at every level of this entity, is yes men to Vieira.
Yep.
So, and this is one part where I will defend Vieira. It's his fault the club is in this situation, but also to an extent now, if he goes, okay, I want to make things right, guys, who should I have? They're all going to look at him saying, you've done everything. Okay, don't worry, boss. Because everyone is scared to say anything.
Yep.
Then you've done amazing. And every answer they get, or he gets, is something that people believe he'll be happy hearing, not what he needs to hear. There's a big difference. There's a big difference between me telling someone, someone that needs to work out a little bit, they go, man, I think I'm gaining too much weight. I know you're fine. It's like, really, I got to start doing something. In the back of my head, I know this guy hates working out. It's like, you know what? Lunch, you know how you hate chicken shawarma? Don't buy chicken shawarma no more. It's unhealthy. He's like, yeah, I don't like it anyways. You're giving him tips and hints that really just plays into his mentality already, right? So that's the trap we're in. Yeah, and it's a self-made trap.
And what do you think JJ's best? What do you think the best formation for this team is? I mean, we've hammered this all season. We've gone back and forth. JJ wants to play a 4-4-2 and doesn't have the pieces to play his style. We don't have a true holding midfielder, and his 4-4-2 is dependent on a true holding midfielder, and he's been hammering Weigl into that role, and he's grown into it a little bit, but he's still not truly a holding, destroyer there in the middle of the midfield like, a Florentino would be. I don't understand, again, that loaning off Florentino if that was the way he wanted to play.
Plus, also, here's the thing. If Weigel's injured, we're relying on Gabriel, and that's been a train wreck. And so it's the planning this year. We got to go into the idea of, we got Weigl. You better have Florentino ready, and if you don't keep Florentino, you loan him out again, or you sell him, you better sign someone decent to support Weigl for rotation if Weigl gets injured or if things aren't working out. In terms of the actual formation, I don't mind this idea of trying this kind of 3-4 kind of 3-4-3 or
3-5-2-ish.
Yeah, whatever kind of thing. I don't mind it. I think Verissimo is amazing. I think Otamendi and Jan Vertonghen are decent. I think we need more depth in the center back if we're going to run this format. You're running. You kind of always got to look at, okay, here's your position. You always go, here's my starter. Here's the guy on the team that will sub it, right? For Taça de Liga, for rotation, things of sort. You're going to go with 3 in the back, and you got no one on the bench except for Muserati, which is really a B team player that you bring in out of necessity, right? To just fill a body, or Jardel per se, right? You don't have a good formation. You can't run that formation, especially if you have real ambitions of winning the Liga, winning the cups, and competing in Europe. You're going to burn your guys out. And George Jesus was notorious for burning players out at some points where he'd give guys just constant minutes. Yeah. You need the rotation. And I just, I don't see it. So if we go,
that's never been his strength either.
Yeah. If you go back to the 4 in the back, you have the 2 fullbacks, the 2 center backs.
Yeah.
At least with the current setup, you could say we have Otamendi, we got Vertonghen, we got Verissimo, and you got Muserati. But you have your 2 main ones. You put Verissimo and Otamendi. You have Jan Vertonghen coming off the bench here and there. And if you need Muserati for a Taça Liga and Jan start or something, but you have at least a little bit of mixture, mistura going on. It's not as bad, right? It's just this current setup can't run. It won't work unless you get a deeper bench.
Yeah, I like the 3-5-2 or the 3-4-3, however you want to set where that's a matter of a couple of meters of where you line players up, whether it's one or it's really not that big of a difference. But I like it basically because of the way this team is built. I think that's the best way to play for what we have. What we see in our club is an inability to work with what we have, and what we want to do is force what we want to do with what we have versus taking what we have and finding what's best. I think finally we found this, and I know a lot of fans don't like it. And especially on the Portuguese language side of the podcasting world, and they hate this formation. They want a Benfica, as they call it. They want to see the team going forward all the time with 4-4-2 and with wide play. But we just don't have the squad to play that way, in my opinion. We tried. and it didn't work. Like you said, if something happens to Weigl, now you've got Gabriel playing as a holding midfielder. Who Gabriel's best work with Benfica was when he was playing as a high pressing midfielder under Bruno Lage. Now, because what he was then, and we forgave the bad passes and the giveaways because he'd work so hard to win the ball back then, and he'd win it back, and then he'd distribute. Now you have Gabriel, who instead of pressing high, sits in the middle of the park and makes the same bad passes. So he's not giving us anything. Yet JJ finds him as a good idea to put him in against Sporting, as the game is slipping away. Just because Weigl's on the yellow card,
Yeah.
And it's like, and the funny thing is, I think it took 3 minutes for Gabriel to go in and pick up a yellow card himself. It completely defeated the whole purpose of making that substitution.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to kind of hear, and you'll only hear these details, and I don't even know if we ever will.
Yeah.
In terms of decisions made at the beginning of the season, again, if I'm taking Luis Vieira's word for it, he did his, I think it was February, that interview he did, and he said all the transfers, all the loan ins, loan outs, things of sort, that was all Jorge Jesus outside of maybe two guys. One guy he really wanted we couldn't get, and we brought in some other guy he didn't want, whatever. And then also the Pedrinho, he's a big crack. He's a Jorge Jesus. That's all he talks about. Luis Vieira is like, anytime I call Jorge Jesus, he just talks about Pedrinho, the crack, amazing. All he has Pedrinho. And I remember watching this interview just a couple of months back, saying this guy barely plays what he freaking. Yeah. And then you saw him included the odd time, but it's like this guy's not even part of the plan. And now it looks like, according to the rumor mills, we're probably going to sell him. And if we get good money, good. But it's just one of these things. It's like, what is the direction the team is going in? What is the type of squad you're building? If it's truly on Jorge Jesus that he selected all these guys, then man, it was a terrible job.
Well, Pedrinho was the deal was made before Jorge Jesus came in.
Yeah,
and then Jorge Jesus in Brazil was making fun of Benfica for that. If you remember, he was saying, "Oh, we got 8 or 9 players in that position better than him in the Brazilian league."
And that was Vieira when he said there's like a couple of guys that Jorge Jesus didn't pick. Pedrinho was one of them.
Yeah,
but don't worry, Jorge Jesus says he's a crack. He's amazing.
Yeah, now he loves.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he kind of went on this whole he was kind of saying like, I did everything Jorge Jesus wanted outside these two guys. He didn't really have the same Pedrinho anyways, but he's amazing. And Jorge Jesus says he's amazing. Jorge Jesus never denied it, but you see it in the 11. To me, that's a message saying, no, he's not a crack, because if he's a crack, he'd be playing.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe that's the perfect segue. Do we want to go to the whole hiring of Jorge Jesus? And I mean, looking back now, I think we may get killed for this by some listeners, some viewers, but I think it was a mistake. I mean, at the time I saw it. I didn't think anything was going to stop it from happening, so I didn't get very vocal about it. I said I thought the writing was on the wall. He was going to go and eventually get Jorge Jesus, and I never imagined it'd be this bad. But I think looking back now with 12 months of football to look back on, I think this was the wrong decision. We had a model we were following, and I know we were struggling, but we wanted to bring players through the system. And we were hiring managers that brought players through the system. The moment you bring in Jorge Jesus, that model goes out the door.
Yeah.
And we offloaded all of our depth, essentially. And what really angers me is we put them in bad situations. We didn't just offload players. We sent them to clubs where they're not going to play. It was a wasted year for Florentino, for Jota. Jetson made his own way, basically getting himself to Turkey, or else it would have been a wasted year and a half for him as well.
Dante
Carlos Vinicius, he played in the League Cup and in the Europa League. I mean, I don't know what thought process is put into where we loan these players, other than the only thing I can think of is that they're financial reasons, and it's because fees are still paid and exchanged when there are loans. It's not a transfer fee, but there's commissions and there's money.
There's commissions and there's a fee you can collect on it. And
right.
Also, maybe if the intent is to sell, you can care less.
And I think that was the deal. It was these loan to sell deals, which
they all were.
Help us.
Yeah, the one to Bayern Munich was to hopefully he bought and to buy cheap if they triggered.
Another one, yeah.
Same with Florentino, with Jetson. It was all like, here you go. If you guys make use of them, feel free to buy. Feel free to buy Vinicius. It was like trying to do a wholesale gut of the team in the wrong areas, in my opinion, also. And in terms of Jorge Jesus, it was purely an election play. It was trying to kind of stay elected. But and some people defend George. Oh, it's his first season. I'm like, no, it's not. This is very different.
No.
Signing a brand new manager that's green, you gotta give a manager time.
Right.
I'm a big advocate of giving guys time. If they have a bad year, you got to give them some more. If they're a green manager and you've decided to go down that path, if you go, listen, I'm going to get a green manager. This is the path I'm going. Where we go. You signed a manager that had 6 years on this team that knows some of the players on this squad are George players. So there's already a component of this 11, a component of the bench. Even though they're old, they're there. Like a lot of the DNA, there's like still parts that he knows. He knows the training facilities, he knows the methodology, he knows a lot of things about the club, he knows the Shishal, he knows a lot of this. And this wasn't like a last minute sign your shoes right before the season started. He got signed for the final few games of the season. Chose not to be the manager because they knew that the team was doing so atrocious. They didn't want George Jesus's first couple games to be a loss to. I think it would have been Sporting and then Porto in the Tasa, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of, let's save face. George, you already know your setup. Here's the talent we're working with. You get to take a look at them for a few games, and then you get to analyze it, and then you get to come in, do the little quick preseason, and away we go. Let us know what you want. A guy with that much experience behind him, the amount of money that was given to him as a salary, you expect more. And if you consider Benfica a big club, a club with any self-respect, a manager would have his head for what he just did. For what he just did, for how bad the year was. Now, I know at the core of it, I still blame Luis Vieira because I think he's a shit president. Now, Yeah, so that's part of where the conundrum is he fires George Jesus. What next? And here's the other thing is when I hear about some of the rumors we were hearing last year for talent that we wanted to sign and some of the rumors we want to sign this year, it's all very short-sighted. It's not to build a project, not to rebuild Benfica. It is, what's the quickest way to maybe get George a quick win so he can bounce and sign with Porto or sign with another club? Because he has made it very clear he's here a temporary. He was going to come in for just 1 year. You'll pay him a ton of money. He's like, fine, I'll waste all your resources. You guys are shit. I hate you. I love Sporting. I said a lot of garbage about you. If you want to pay me enough money, I'll tolerate you for a year and I'm out. Fine. I'll stay for 2 years.
Right.
What's good for the future of this club? I don't care. I want to get that guy. That guy has 1 more year or 2 more seasons left in him. I want to build something to pad my resume to get the heck out of here. And if you're left with a bunch of guys that are, whether you looked at the Cavani rumors, I was excited about the idea. Don't get me wrong. The Diego Costa rumors, again, a talented player. If you look at the Otamendi's, the Jan Vertonghen's, you look at some of the other talent that's been talked about, he's not looking at guys that are going to be here in 3 years. He's looking at guys that are going to potentially get him the quick and dirty in, and these guys are done. And the club's not going to have a transfer out fee for these guys because they're going to retire. They won't make money off it, and it's someone else's problem. So I just kind of look at the direction as a whole. I don't get it. Before, you could have made a fair argument in defending Vieira and saying we're going youth, and I supported it. That my criticism of Vieira from the Penta year onward is I am all for youth, but look at Ajax where they use youth and they bring in some experienced players to blend with it. So every time you sell a big ticket, we're not Sanch, Samidu, take half of that money. I understand half has to get spent and reinvest it, but it was just a refusal to invest and always dependent 110% on the youth. I'm like, you're going to get in trouble. And we did. Now saying abandon all youth, it's like, no, that's not how you can't just compete with City in the transfer market. You're going to get decimated. So you got to build.
Yeah, and I think we were made to look like fools in the whole Cavani thing. I mean, we were clearly used to leverage a deal somewhere else. He used the interest from Benfica to get himself more money somewhere else. And I think someone like Vieira, at all these years in management, in being the president of the club, and even Rui Costa, I have to put some on him too, to allow themselves to be dragged on for the entire offseason like that, which I think hurt the stability of the team. It hurt the building process of the team. And it hurt who came after a lot, I think, because what happens is you don't get Cavani. But here's Darwin Nunez.
Yeah, and here's the price tag. It was a panic buy because we needed to sign someone because we got rid of Vinicius at that point. We already got rid of Vinicius thinking we had Cavani, which was like so stupid.
And so here comes this 20-year-old kid from the second division in Spain, and you've overpaid for him. And it's a gamble. What it is you're rolling the dice hoping that by the end of this 5-year contract, he's worth more than he is now, than what you paid for him. All right. But now he's got these ridiculous expectations of scoring 25 goals as a 20-year-old in his first top flight season in Europe.
If you have, like, here's the thing: if you go back a year, no one knew Darwin, first of all. But
Right.
if we were having a conversation with Benfica and you go, here's some youth talent in the second division world, young guys coming up. Benfica's got Gonzalo Ramos. I hear there's this Darwin kid. Who do you want? Everyone say Ramos.
Right. Because we know him.
And we know him. The kid has lots of
We've seen
potential.
it. Yeah.
We've seen it. Cool. And then you go, listen, you're saying you've seen Ramos, and you guys are the scouts. You guys are the experts.
Mm-hmm.
And you analyze Darwin, and you're like, trust me, man, if we have a choice between having Ramos or Darwin, he's better than Ramos. So much so we're willing to like smash a record transfer fee to prove how good this kid is. And I think there's lots of potential in Darwin. I think there's a ton of potential, but it just wasn't smart. I think if we had kept Vinicius and you had Darwin coming off the bench, things are sorted. But it's just the Vinicius loan was just a stupid move by Benfica.
Yeah, it was capitalizing on a golden boot that he won with 18 goals. I mean, the lowest ever. It was totally exploiting a very unique an anomaly, if you will, scoring so few goals to win a golden boot. But hey, it's the golden boot. Tottenham, here you go. And Mourinho being at Tottenham at the time said, I need a League Cup striker. Harry Kane,
Mendes,
and Mendes, and you get George Mendes in there. And that this is really where these deals come from. It has nothing to do with the product on the pitch. It has nothing to do with the club's needs. It has to do with the people they do business with and what they want to do.
Yeah, and there's a lot of a lack of accountability. So Luis Vieira beat his chest with spending the way he spent and ran the election on it. This is what I did. Right. Then the election ends and it's going sideways. This is what Jorge Jesus did. You know, you kind of see the change in narrative. And by the way, I'm not going to show up my face anymore because the shit's going bad. I don't want my face to be the face of it. Right. So let's throw Rui Costa out there. But someone has got to go. And if I don't know, I would not care. I love Rui Costa, but if Rui Costa got fired from Benfica, say it's his fault, I'm like, I don't care. Take someone. I don't care for Jorge Jesus. I don't care for Rui Costa. Someone's got to go.
Be accountable. Exactly.
Yeah. You can't have that bad of a season, spend that kind of money, and have no change whatsoever in the mentality.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about what's going on over there with fans and voicing their opinions? We've talked a little bit about this off air.
Yeah, it's a challenge where you have these, you got these people that, Lopes ran against Vieira, and you go back to the election. So you go back to the election, and you had a candidate go against Vieira the first time Vieira truly got challenged at this level. And Lopes won more votes than Vieira has ever won in his entire presidential life. After many elections at Benfica. Vieira has never won the presidency of Benfica with the number of Lopes votes that he got.
Right.
Magically, in the worst year possible with everything that happened, Vieira shattered the record for votes.
Yeah.
He came out on this whole thing beforehand. He refused to do debates, which aggravated a lot of people. Every candidate tried, like no tomorrow, to issue debates, tried debates. There was even one that came very close where Lopes was at a casa, and Vieira made some BS excuse. Oh, it's just timing. We can't get the timing, whatever. And Vieira was supposed to be at another Casa campaigning the next day. Lopes was like, I'll go there. I'll cancel all my events. I'll go there. Vieira instantly said, no, I'm canceling. I won't go. I don't want to be anywhere near any other candidate. I can't be seen debating anything because I can't. So the whole election was done improperly in that sense. There was a whole process on counting the ballots that was said how it's supposed to be gone, how the ballots are supposed to be gathered. The protocol wasn't followed. It was clearly video. A lot of fans, a lot of depths recorded it saying, oh, this is fishy. At the end of the day, Vieira won. The calls to recount the ballots, there's some fair arguments. The club's refusal to legitimize the election, to count the ballots, to hire lawyers to fight any court cases against the counting the ballots, to refuse to call a general assembly to discuss anything. Fans, it creates this whole anti-Vieira thing that was already there, and I'll admit that one of these guys, I was sick of them.
I was there too.
But after the election, and this is recorded, I said, listen, it's over. Vieira won. Coalesce. Carrega Benfica. We got to all come together.
Yep.
His refusal to do these things has only fueled this movement that is sick of the way things are being run. That movement just gets worse and worse and worse, the way Vieira acts. You think a general assembly. So Vieira is getting together with the president of Porto, president of Sporting, a bunch of delegates, Liga people. He got together with them a few days ago. Policy, full room. They make fun about the goodie bags they all came out with.
Mm-hmm.
There was a general assembly because of all this called, because of COVID, we can't have the general assembly, but I can have a general assembly that doesn't have socios. You know what I mean? It's these types of actions that as each month goes by, you get one or more person that goes, I'm sick of this, man. You can't act like this. You can't run the club this way. So in terms of these people, man, they're just trying to create more awareness. They're not backing any particular candidate, but I'll tell you this much. If it was Lopes that ran, they'd support him. If it was another prominent guy, they just don't want Vieira in office anymore. And Vieira, to his detriment, he could have counted the ballots, confirmed things. He refused to. Then there's other areas where Vieira could have won on. So the women's team, and I know we kind of talked about the idea. We'll spend some time talking about. They pulled off something amazing, right? The fact that they won something at being such a new project that was created.
Yeah,
Vieira could come out and say, "Listen, this is something I backed, and look what they did in such a short period of time." He doesn't bother going to the game. He doesn't bother being there with the celebration. Any other club president would be there.
Yeah,
because he's got his own other issues to take care of. It's his refusal to even take part in those items. So if you're the person that supports the women's game and you're like, oh my God, what a great accomplishment. Where's my president? Just the Champions League youth final that we went to. He didn't even bother going to the game.
Mm-hmm.
Every other club's president goes. It's these things that you're doing that it's like you support the youth. You got the message. Vieira doesn't support it. You support the women. Vieira doesn't support that. You support the, you know what I mean? Like it's like bit by bit. There's areas where Vieira could have very easy wins on to help coalesce the fan base.
And he doesn't even put in the minimal effort.
Yeah, there's things he could do that would get him more support, and it would kind of help because this isn't good for the club to have this division, right? It's only, and the thing is, his actions only make it worse. To get friggin' Guerrero, that guy out in BTV, slandering everyone that disagrees with Vieira.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Vieira loves that, but it only agitates more and more fans. It's a self-creating or self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, which you're going to have more protests. And I'm curious, once fans are allowed in the stadium, how things turn out.
Yeah, obviously, if we had fans in the stadium this season, it would have been a much different environment. I think the anti-Vieira hostility would be turned up even more.
Which makes sense why he's the only president out of the big three not advocating for fans back.
Right.
He doesn't want fans around. The club's better without the fans.
He is the least popular probably of the big, let's say big four. Braga deserve to be in the conversation now.
Yeah, and then you kind of go with the whole thing I had with the Super League conversation and the general statement that was thrown out saying we'll get new fans.
Yeah.
That reeks of Vieira's mentality.
It does. And it really explains why Vieira has done some of the, he goes against the statutes of the club, adds colors to the uniform that he's technically not allowed to do, which some people take that more seriously than others. But it's the little things, the monochromatic emblem. And these are the little things that the Super League owners and presidents are doing. You've seen Juventus change from a crest they had for 100 years to a simple J because it's popular in Asia. Marketing. All right. You've seen Inter get a new badge, and it's just, never mind the English teams, they change badges all the time, but he literally fits. It's like he's trying to audition for that Super League group as far as in the boardroom with the decisions he makes with this club. And I think the fan base the majority of the fan base sees through it, or the vocal part of the fan base. Now, for the first time ever, Mario, after we lost the cup final, someone explained to me, now, what are you going to say to mobilize the 36%? And I thought that was hilarious that someone thinks I have that kind of influence over that many people, which is a joke. But the fact that, because we always talk about the 63 or the 64%, and finally someone fought back and said the 36%, talking about us. So someone, because who is this 2/3 majority? They don't.
You don't see them. You just don't see
them.
I know only of a handful of guys that will say I support this structure. If you look at every single Benfica project that's independent across both English and in Portuguese, you see a tiny amount. Like if you do it as a percentile, it's a small percentage kind of might support Vieira. The vast majority don't like it. And it's, again, you'll see like the odd guy saying, yeah, sure, I like him. But again, and I've had events with like 100 people in it, I might have like 5 people that say, yeah, I like Vieira, but the other 95 don't like him.
Right.
And it's like, I don't know where the heck this support is because you just don't see it.
Mm-hmm. And I think those of us that spend this much time on this team, I think you come to a conclusion that something's wrong. Whereas I guess if you just turn on your TV every week, watch the game, turn it off, and go about your life, you're not maybe as aware.
Well,
of
if you
all
only
of
watch
these things.
BTV, right?
Especially if you only watch BTV.
And that's the problem. And I love the idea of BTV, but this is where it's gotten corrupted. It's like you're refusing to debate, you're refusing to discuss issues.
Yeah.
And you use that as a platform to slander anyone that doesn't agree with what the president says. Not the club,
Right.
The president.
The president, exactly.
Yeah.
And the president is not the club, and he's really carried himself like an owner more than a president in the past year at least.
But yeah, onto the women's thing, I would say that's a massive accomplishment because I got to say, like, that is, as a father of 2, a son and a daughter, my little girl's quite young. She knows I love Benfica. She knows my wife loves Benfica, and so because the little kids, they're cute, and she loves listening to Benfica songs. And when Benfica's playing, she's like, "Oh, it's Benfica's playing." I go, "Yeah, okay, go ahead." She's little, right? But she cheers it on. She gets very excited. So here's this cup final, and she comes in the living room. She's like, "Oh, Benfica's playing." I'm like, "Yeah, but Eva, sit down with me. Look, it's the girls' team." She's like, "What? Yeah. It's the girls' team. Look at the girls' team." And she's like, "Oh," and she had this cute smile on her face that there are these girls with hair like her that are playing, representing Benfica and winning a championship. It means a lot. I know there's some people that sometimes go, "Oh, this isn't," but it is the future of. I know there's Molidade. There's 2 differences. Sometimes people go, "Oh, this is part of the Molidade." I'm like, to me, it isn't, because to me, it's you have football and you have the proper men's team. The women's sport is growing in Europe. You're seeing the Champions League, the amount of money going in. You're seeing every major club has investments in the side. Benfica was well behind the curve on this one.
Absolutely.
But Benfica invested big. I got to say, if I lived in Portugal, I'd go to some of these games myself. I get depressed when I don't see the level of support I think they should have because how cheap the tickets are. But they're investing big, investing in, like, Canada is a powerhouse in the women's game. They got a Canadian girl that's talent, right? They went out to Brazil and got talents. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They seek them out, and it's going to develop the Portuguese women's side because they're going to get some players that come out of it also, right?
Yeah.
And it's something huge, I think, for the sport. I think it's good for Benfica. I think it's something we should continue to grow. I think it's a proper investment. And man, it was cool to see. It was very cool to see because it's something you just don't normally see as a team with such little experience. Yes, talented players, but as an existence, very new to win it like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been vocal. I've fallen in love with that team over the course of its short history. I mean, when I always I almost am embarrassed saying I was pretty ignorant of the women's game for most of my life. And then I heard Benfica's getting a women's team. And because it's Benfica, all of a sudden I'm like, well, I can give this a try. I watched the first game, the presentation. It was a preseason game against Deportivo Coruña. And I was like, wow, they're good. And then I'm like, this is Benfica. I'm like, all of a sudden in a preseason friendly, by the end of the game, I see myself on the edge of my seat, as I watched the same way I watched the men's team. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to follow this, I followed that first season, which they destroyed everything in their path because they had to start in the second division. They're winning matches 38-0, which is,
it was wild. It's fun. It's fun, man. You're watching a smashing. It's your team. Plus also, I get what the B team and even the women's team, they play in the Seychelles and the other fields they got, but the odd game they play at the Luge. And something about seeing the sport played at the Luge. Yeah. It just gives you, it's like, that's our cathedral. It adds more oomph to it.
And it's great. As I started getting more and more into this team, right? They won the cup in their first year in existence. Out of the second division, they won the Taça de Portugal. They beat the champions, the first division champion, Sporting Braga, to get to the final, and then they win the final. So I start to know the names after a while. You see a few games. So I said, I should be covering. Why am I not covering this team in my podcast? I have a podcast. Why have I never talked about this? And I start to, and I find that I have a lot more fun talking about them. I have a lot more fun watching them play and taking notes on what they're doing. And then I start to tag the players in posts, and I'll put an Instagram story up, a new women's episode, and I'll tag as many of the players as I can in there. They're responding. Thank you so much. This means so much to us that you guys are watching. And your compatriot there, Chloe Lacasse, when she re-signed, I put it in my Instagram story, right? Because my first reaction after we won that game against Sporting and we won the Liga BPI, we were the champions. In the first full season, we were in the first division. We won the title. That needs to sink in a little bit. And we beat two established teams in Braga and in Sporting. We've been together for years. And then when she re-signed, that was like a weight off of my shoulders because I was worried she had grown so much in the 2 seasons she's been here that she was going to go somewhere else. Now that she was part of the Canadian national team, that takes on a whole new profile, and then they've re-signed her. So I put it in. I got a message back from her, and she's like, "Let's go."
Yeah, I mean, they're in it, and they're trying to grow the sport. They're trying to grow the sport, and it's. And I'll say from a Canadian's perspective, we've always had or a little backwards in the sport in the sense of, and I don't want to call it backwards, but just the reality of it that typically it's men's game first, women's game second. In Canada, the men's game has been extremely far behind while the women have been winning tournaments. And so they have more face time.
Similar down here in the States. It's similar.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, true. Where the women's U.S. team is massive. But it's cool to kind of see that kind of growth. I think it's good for the league. I think it's good for the sport. I like it, and I feel it's more tied to the main team than anything else the club has. So I'm excited for the Champions League next year to kind of see who they line up with and what they do there. I'm going to try myself following it even closer than I do now. I sometimes get annoyed that I feel you just don't hear enough of it from the club.
Yeah,
you hear drips of it, but like I think it's huge. I do get very. I think it's just a Portuguese mentality. It is. I forgot to remind myself it's an old mentality country, right? But before the whole situation with the shutdown, things of sort, when they had fans in the stadium, the club was offering practically free games next to nothing, and they're trying to like pull people to watch these girls play. And I just kind of look at it like, man, I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like I'd make wisecrack comments when they first launched this team saying, if I lived in Portugal, I got a wife, I got 2 kids.
Yeah.
Everyone in Portugal complains about how much poverty-stricken they are, which is BS in my opinion, because I've gone there many times and they live a very good lifestyle and relative to the cost of living. And when you got a major sports team saying, hey, you want to go watch a game for $1? I can't do it. I'm sorry. I couldn't be bothered. I got to go spend $5 a day on cafesh because I'm going to have multiple cafesh out the day. You know what I mean? Like you could take your entire family out and have an amazing outing. And support something good, and it's connected with the club. And it always irritates me that I just feel it should be a full house, and even if it's not, they should just have more support. And it's just it's a piss poor mentality.
David's saying here, he's watching on YouTube. He says the same about Braga's club. It's a fresh air of expectations, and I say so. Yeah, I mean, what's exciting about this women's team? Like you said, they're going into the Champions League again, second time. Next year, the Champions League is adding a group stage. This year, it was a knockout the whole way through. They ran into the second best team in the world once they got once the heavyweights got in, and they were knocked out in the tournament proper by Chelsea, who went all the way to the final. So there's no shame in that. The disparity in the investment between Benfica and Chelsea in the women's game is, you have a World 11 on Chelsea's side. I remember. Valdemar Duarte, the commentator, when he called the game on BTV, explained that Chelsea women's team is worth more than, I forget how many. The payroll is higher than, I forget how many he said, but 7, 8, first division men's teams in Portugal. So that's what we were going against. And David just added here. I'll put it. And Braga last year ran into PSG, same exact situation.
Yeah, they spend big time.
And they spend big time. They spend
their women's
big
game
time.
Huge, yeah.
And it's the future, the upside on this women's team is so high. I wrote an article about Kika Nazaré. She's 18 years old. She signed with George Mendes. First of all, she's the first female player to sign with him, which tells you the potential there. He's not just signing.
He's doing it for money. He knows there's potential marketing dollars are there. The amount of money the women's team in the U.S. and in Canada bring in from a marketing standpoint is quite large. And the European market, understand that the sport, and obviously you'll know this, is that how it's big in North America, not that big, but in Europe, as this women's game grows in Europe, and it's going to grow in Latin America, and it has been growing. It's going to bring in more dollars. The investment is worthwhile.
Yeah, and we've seen I mean, Benfica's gotten Brazil internationals, a Canadian international, a Nigerian international. These are all World Cup level players. They're not just bringing in. Plus, they have the core now. Benfica has probably almost half of the Portuguese national team within its club. If it's not now, it will be over the next 4-year cycle to the next World Cup. We have 7 girls going into this next national team camp for Portugal. And I think that's more than even Sporting, who have been the core of the national team for quite some time. And I just see the upside. And now you got Philippe Paton, who came in as the new manager at the halfway point of the season. Everything changed when she took over. She gets it. She's got the football mind, but she was a player herself. And I want to be careful not to sound sexist, but I think women are better coached by women in a lot of situations. And we'd had males coaching the women's team, and the change in this team when a female took over, she just maybe it's just the approach to how to explain things that might be slightly different that makes them that much more clear. She's got males in her staff, but the voice, the authority in the team is a female voice.
It is also, I'm talking to someone that has been there, like I have been there,
exactly.
Right? So there's a better level of relation in there. And then I also look at the other huge thing I'm excited to see. And again, the women's game is more broadcast here in North America in the sense of the World Cups and things of sort.
Yeah.
The last 20 some odd years, Portugal has been a powerhouse in the sport on the men's side. So you're going late 90s, golden generation up until today, a team that is always in every tournament. If you do a Nike advertisement because they're our sponsor, or you see a World Cup advertisement or a Euro advertisement, the Portuguese symbol is there.
Yeah.
That's not said about other countries. Again, 10 million plus, 11 million people in this country. So if you look at Croatia, you look at these other countries that are, let's say, population size.
Yeah.
They will once every other tournament and once in a blue moon show up. However, on the women's game, you never see the Portuguese flag ever. And the benefit to this is how good Braga's been doing, how good Sporting's been doing, and now Benfica, and more investment going in, is to bring in these external talents playing with domestic talents. It ups the level of the game. It produces more women to play. And I hope very soon we're going to start seeing a Portuguese national team on the women's side competing a bit more, because, you create this culture. You create more, you had all male trainers, like you said, and also you got a female with still male assistants, but you get she might get a Portuguese assistant that's female. That maybe it's a female that's played a little bit, wasn't great, but she knows the game and she has a head for the game, because now there's the job opening. It creates positions for them. And that will only filter more into the federation and just the growth across the board, right? So it's a very good thing. It's a good news story, in my opinion.
I had the opportunity years ago to meet Monica George, who at the time was the women's national team coach. Okay, and she was at that time the federation was looking in North America for talent that could qualify for a Portuguese passport to get into the national team. So I've met a handful of ex-Portugal internationals because they live here in the United States or in Canada, and I've crossed paths with them on the coaching in the coaching different coaching things we've been to. But I started following the Portuguese team then because I started to know people on the inside, so I had a little more interest. And I know we had a tryout here in my area. I sent, I think, 3 players. I recommended 3 players to go try out for Portugal's national team, American-born players.
Yeah.
None of them ended up doing it because the federation literally couldn't guarantee them anything. You're going to go to Portugal, and then what? You're going to go to this one national team camp. They'd have jobs they'd have to leave. They'd have school they'd have to leave. At that time, it just wasn't doable. But now you fast forward 10 years, and they're not looking for players here anymore. They got their own. The Benfica, Sporting, Braga, Famalicão are producing players that are feeding in. We got a girl on Marítimo who is now in the full national team as a teenager as well. And I actually wouldn't mind if Benfica thought about maybe even signing her. I don't even know if it's possible because I believe she's still a student. So there's complications in moving from the island to the continent to join Benfica. I mean, I'm sure it's things that could be worked out, but the reality is a lot of these girls are still students. There were a Champions League match where Andrea Faria missed the trip to Chelsea because she had an exam. Like it's like the old and the new, like kind of this is that meeting point.
Yeah.
And from here you see where it's going to go because the team is getting more professionalized. The money we spent on a lot of foreign players at the start, most of them have gone. We've replaced them with homegrown players. We just lost our captain, Darlene, went to Flamengo, not for any other reason than the fact that Kika is better than her as an 18-year-old.
She's good.
You know, and Darlene needs to play. She needs minutes or she won't get back in her national team.
And this is where I don't want to offend the people that are big fans of the Molidade, but there are things in Molidade, whether, cycling, call it whatever it is. It's a good-natured effort. It's nice to have a Benfica representation, but the club is not going to make massive dollars.
No.
Like, the goal is to try to see if we can get the Molidade self-sufficient, which is tough. And a lot of times it requires more money to keep them alive. The Champions League actually pays some serious coin, and the amount of money that UEFA is dedicating to it, and sponsors like Nike and Adidas and things of sort. Like, Adidas wants this. Like, they're a shirt sponsor. If we go with another shirt sponsor, more and more when they're looking at it and they're kind of looking at the institution they're partnering with as a brand, whether it be Reebok, whoever it is, go, okay, cool. I'm going to slap my brand. I'm going to pay you Benfica money. I got a women's team in the deal also. Great. Like, it actually does move the needle from a monetary standpoint. A huge investment up front, and you got to stick with it. But I think it's good for these clubs to be doing it. I think it's part of the future of the sport. And if you get in, we missed the ground floor. I will say we have missed the ground floor, but it's still so early in the development of the sport that there's a lot of growth to get in there, right?
Absolutely. And there are going to be pretty good-sized transfer fees collected at some point for these players. I do believe that. And that's only going to fund the sport even more, and that's the upside we're talking about. And as these big clubs, in England and in France are investing more and more, and in Spain now, Barcelona just won the Women's Champions League with an absolute onslaught. I mean, they absolutely thrashed Chelsea, and they're a mostly Spanish and Dutch team, grown in La Masia, just like the men were.
And I look at the target audience, and I understand that there's an old country mentality with the older generation, and having been born there and also having a lot of family there, but the generation of my age, they like this.
Yeah.
And the next generation likes even further. So if you're looking at your mid-30s and you look at people in the mid-20s, they like it even more. You look at the kids in their teens.
Yeah.
It is going to be the expectation that they have this to cheer for. Because I look at the stands today at Benfica when we had before the whole thing, and you look at the people in the stands, you have a certain number of women in the stands watching Benfica play the men's team. If I go back 20 years ago, that was not the case. You saw some, but not as much. Like, it's just... you look at kind of the development in general of society, you got to go with the damn curve. It's just, you got to modernize. And so I'm excited for it because I think it's the right place to be. I think it's good growth for the club. I think it's good growth for the sport. And going back to my daughter, man, it's really cool that she'll have something to cheer on and she'll have some titles. And the only thing I'm waiting on, and I've been trying to find it, is I have not seen I have a collection of scarves you could see, obviously, and it's all around and things of the sort.
Yeah.
It's the first ever title that Benfica's ever won.
That championship with the one on it,
I want a scarf with that. I haven't seen it yet. I keep going to the lodge, and right now as we're talking, they're selling a T-shirt or the jersey. They have they won the thing, so whatever jerseys they got, they're selling, which makes sense. Whatever the season's done, you want to clear out the jerseys, and they're promoting that. But I want a damn scarf, man.
Yeah, and you can see what David said there on the screen, and he's 100% right, and it's in so many areas. This is so true, because just look at the way the men's game is promoted. Look at how they televise it. We are all proud of being Portuguese, but man, they are not good at they're not good
communication
and communication
and just I gotta say, and I offend a lot of people back home, and I feel bad because I got family and friends out there. But my God, like, the problem is they're living in the Stone Ages and how they run businesses and how they think. And it's not like, I'm not even talking about sexism and shit. Like, I'm just talking in general marketing, awareness of issues, just like even this whole thing of the lockdown and reopening up, denying anyone. You could have given 1,000 Benfiquistas and 1,000 fans from Braga, social distance with lots of space and given the 20,000 to the Champions League. But you would have given to say not one soul can attend. Yeah. But it's like, come on, guys. And when you're having concerts, but that you can't have one person, you know what I mean? Like, you could have said, listen, because of social distancing things, but we understand families are being careful. We're going to open it up to like a few kids. Like the Canadian Premier League did in the midst of the whole shutdown last season.
Right.
They couldn't have fans. So they did a bubble. They did have a couple of games where they said, we understand it's a bubble. They invited a few families, a few schools, a few children in a very set up, structured manner. It's not a friggin' stadium full of people. It was 100 people spread out, but it was cherry picking. They could have used that as an opportunity to, here's an orphanage. We're going to take all the orphans out and we're going to spread them out. They can go watch a game, because we can actually do that in a 30,000 seat stadium and space out 300 people. Because that's, if you can't space them out in that venue, you can't space them out anywhere. You know what I mean? It's missed opportunities from a marketing standpoint. You know what I mean? Like it's silliness, but there's so many things that you look at, man. You guys just so close to doing something good.
And they haven't figured this out. Like, again, they scheduled the last day of the Liga NOS the day before. Teams reported to training on Tuesday, or on Monday, finding out their game is now on Tuesday. And of course, your TV partners around the world can't keep up with that. They can't show listings of what game is going to be on. Here in the U.S., Gold TV didn't even show the last day until the following weekend. They showed it on Saturday. And so while Benfica was playing in the Taça final against Braga, their game against Vitória Guimarães was on Gold TV. And I totally put that all on the league because of the way that they do things. The way they conduct business is just so asinine and so backwards, so antiquated. They're running it like an amateur league when it's a fully professional business.
And it's the whole favoritism too. And I love Benfica, but the favoritism towards Benfica to Sporting and to Porto is disgusting. And it goes with the schedule, where the reason they don't want to release a full schedule in advance is they go, okay, let's see how Benfica, Sporting, and Porto do in the Champions League or Europa League. Because if, let's say, Sporting gets knocked out, they get third place in the Champions League and they go to Europa and they get a game on Thursday, we want to make sure that they get lots of rest. So it's like they have no care about the Paços Ferreira of the world, the other clubs playing. They're trying to finesse the league to keep the big club. It's like, no, release the schedule. We know the European schedule. UEFA releases that well in advance. So exactly all the match days up until the Champions League final, pretty much on cue, and same Europa. So you schedule and go with the assumption that, listen, we're not going to, for the teams that are qualified for Europe, we will align their games to be on a Sunday. If a team's in the Champions League, we're going to allow their game not have any games on a Sunday. On the preceding week, there's a chance we'll only have them on Saturday. You know what I mean? You can arrange it and then do your draw, and away you go, and boom. And you map it out for the entire season. And whichever clubs have qualified for European competition, you've aligned the schedule some way.
Exactly.
And that's it. And it's like, and if you need to make an exemption and move a game, then you do it. Like if you have a case where you put, just in case they're in the Champions League and they play on a Tuesday, let's put them on a Saturday, but they get knocked out early in the qualifier, let's say like Benfica did, and they go to Europa, and now they're playing on a Thursday. They go, we can only shift the Saturday game to a Sunday game. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world because the way you run the schedule, but it's such a poor choice by a Liga not to broadcast that, because it makes it harder for planning. I mean, the Portuguese club, my old man's a president of a club, and they have a billboard with all the matches coming up. Right. That billboard gets updated when they update the Liga, which is like a week or two in advance usually, right?
And you fall behind. It's so hard to plan a trip. I mean, if I want to go see here, and as much as I criticize Major League Soccer, if I want to go see, say, El Tráfico, LA versus LA, as a neutral, on the first day the schedule's released, I can go to the website. I can purchase a ticket. I have a start time, a date. I can purchase the hotel. I can purchase a flight.
Yeah.
And I know they're going to play within a reasonable window of that time. It may be moved forward or backwards even a day. But if you go for a weekend, you're going to catch the match. Yeah.
And it's just very poor planning how they do it, right? It's something on a Thursday, then the fan. I'm just reading Dave's comment here.
I am too, yeah. I'll put it up so the viewers can see it.
Yeah, it's easier for me to read.
I do remember that. I remember being pretty pissed off about that, knowing the heavy Azorian population here in the area I live in. That's the game of the year for them when Benfica goes to their home and they want to go see them play in the Azores, and they move it. People have tickets and they just move the game. They arrive on Friday and that's it.
It goes to the whole lack of respect for the fan base and the people who support this item. This is where the mockery of the Super League, to an extent, happened is the fact that these teams that tried creating this entity, and you had a lot of clubs bitching. But there's a rightful level of mockery that happened to the teams bitching, because the same teams that were complaining, if you think of Ajax, well, I don't want to make comments, but I think Ajax does a good job, but let's say Benfica, I'll pick on Benfica because Benfica say, oh, this isn't good for the sport. I'm like, yeah, you're right. That Super League's not good for the sport. And what you guys do domestically is also not good for the sport. You know what I mean? I'm glad you're recognizing this, that the fans are important and that there's certain things about the sport that have to be respected. You should probably start doing it locally also. It goes a long way.
And you see the comment there on the screen now. Grimes says he's tired of playing Thursdays, no more Europa League. That is also a nightmare for scheduling when we play on Thursdays.
I hate the Thursdays, and because they always lead to Monday games. I hate midweek
games.
Exactly.
And next thing you know, a month and a half has gone by where you haven't had any weekend fixtures, and it's just like, come on.
Yeah. It's so we'll see. We'll see how the season comes up. There's lots of there's so much potential. I also feel I've never felt this like bipolar on the club where I feel like it's a complete train wreck, reset the club, needs to blow everything up. Till also at the same conversation, I could have a conversation with someone and say how a couple of more pieces, and this is a great team on our hands. You know what I mean? Like, just it's so tough.
Yeah,
man.
I know. How are you doing on time, Mario? I know you've got some commitments today.
I got to run off in a short bit here. Okay. I got my old man his Festivus for his lunch is coming up in a couple of days, and last minute it happened that we're hosting it here. So
I just had a couple things I wanted to hit on, and we kind of hit on it. But let's talk about the finances at the club for a minute. Where do you think they are right now? I know you're usually more in tune in this than mostly anyone I know, so I'd like to get your opinion on where we are right now.
So there's a really cool thing that came out. Let's see if I can find it. KPMG is an auditing firm, international auditing firm, which does annual reports. Deloitte does these also, and they released their most annual one for Europe. It was kind of neat. Benfica's on it because Benfica's on this list, because I don't give a damn what anyone talks about for Vieta and everything else, things of sort. This club is a powerhouse in Europe. It makes more money than, I have actually had people saying, oh, Benfica can't compete with a team that just got promoted into the EPL. That's an outright lie.
Right.
There are 8 EPL teams with higher valuations than Benfica, and that's it. And Benfica used to be higher. Benfica fell off a little bit last year. Earnings wise, from that report, we saw a drop in earnings, no different than all the other clubs, not anywhere near the worst of it. If you take the top 30 clubs, we're in the middle of the pack in terms of losing some ticket revenue, but it wasn't that much. We only lost, I think it was like 10%. And then, we complained about how much money was spent. The reality is it's all smoke and mirrors. We spent a ton of money, but we sold a ton of talent, also sold Ruben Diaz and other players. And so Benfica only spent 30 million. That's it. This is a club that's made a fortune financially. It is a healthy club. It has a capacity. It's just there's just a lot of money that keeps disappearing each season. I don't think the club, when Vieta was leaning to the idea that we can't sign that much this summer, I think that's an outright lie. We can sign more if we want to sign more. I think we might actually spend a bit more money this year. I don't know how it's going to shake out in terms of sales, but I wouldn't be shocked if we easily dropped another 60 million this offseason, and also probably sell like a Pizzi or someone else to kind of offset it a bit. But I'm not worried about the financial situation of the club at all. I think there's, it's healthy. I think we could push a bit more.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because you do hear about selling, and I have a question. Like, I question how much we actually have to sell that there's actually a demand for right now, and I think a lot of our players have lost value.
I agree. I think you can hoodwink someone on Pizzi in a sense, because he was the Europa League top goal scorer. They could kind of say, listen, the guy was, you think Bruno Fernandes is good. When Bruno Fernandes competed in the same level as Pizzi, it was Pizzi winning the MVPs. So he was winning more monthly MVPs. You saw that he delivered in Europe. Right now, the club's in a bit of a mess. This guy's looking to move on to something bigger, and you can kind of do we wish we could keep him, but shucks, we got it. So I think we can get a decent ticket on him. I don't think Tottenham's going to trigger the clause on Vinicius. I really doubt it now that Mourinho's gone. So I think we could get something for him. I don't know, Raf, if we could have the same route.
I
And
think
that's
Rafa in England could be a very good player because of his style, where when he's not being focused on by the opponent, because that's what hurts him in our league, is they just start hacking him. They don't really play that way in other places. They just play. And if he's not focused on, I think he could end up having a good season. He's still young enough, and if he stays fit, to have a good season somewhere.
Yeah.
And
I think we could get. I got a feeling it's going to be upsetting, but because Jetson showed up a good bit, I think he's going to get sold. It might not be for a great amount, but if you think if we got like 30 million for Pizzi, all of a sudden we get like 15 million or 10 million for Jetson because he's showing some promise and things of sort. All of a sudden the club's raising 40 million to get rid of a few other smaller pieces for a few million here and there. All of a sudden the club raises 50 million. If the club wants to spend 70 million and they sold 50, it's a negative 20, but they have the budget for it. They can take that. If the club doesn't want to go on the negative route, well, if you sell 50 million, you have 50 million spend, even 30 million spend, you can sign, two decent players at 15 million and you add some depth.
Yeah. And I hope the club is careful about where they spend their money, because Jorge Jesus is here for one more season. His contract's up, and who knows, Vieira could go crazy and re-sign him to some, I think there'd be a revolt if he did it, but I'd be careful who we go spend money on. Like we said earlier, you get these guys, that are right now guys that 18 months from now, we'll be looking at how are we going to offload these salaries that JJ brought in, and you bring in let's talk about Al Muserati for a second, because that's the name everybody wants. And I heard someone make the case that, he's great for a JJ system, but if the next coach plays a completely different system, you could find yourself with a high salary and a guy that doesn't really fit, which I think has happened to some of these Bruno Lage guys that got left behind. Yeah. And, we re-signed some players, and Taarabt is one of the we re-signed him, and I'm sure he's not cheap. And I really don't know how much more we're going to get out of him. And David's here again with another good comment. He makes a great point here. Yeah. And I don't think Benfica will be happy letting go of Gonçalo Ramos for pretty much anything right now.
I think people are going to be livid if we get rid of him. And you got to do something with the kid. I don't understand why nothing has been done with him properly, in my opinion. I think this year is his year to kind of pop up a bit. I really look at some of the guys who are looking at signing the Ryan Gold. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Ryan Gold, Gold.
Lots of potential with him. The one thing that someone told me that popped my bubble a bit, the kid's exciting. He was one of the best midfielders in Liga NOS. And I didn't know this, but just a couple of years back when Jorge Jesus was at Sporting, that kid was at Sporting. Yeah. And he's one of the reasons that kid's not at Sporting anymore, because he didn't see any potential in the kid. So, but I do feel that this year it's going to be a lot of domestic shopping. I think Sporting showed they're successful doing that. Benfica's been successful doing that in the past. Pizzi, Rafa, a lot of these guys are domestic signings, right? Correct. The Carlos Jr., I think is that his name?
From Santa Clara.
Santa Clara. Yeah. He's another one that's being thrown around a lot. I got a feeling it'll be that. It'll be $10, $15 million maybe for some of these guys. Some of these guys might only be like 2 or 3 million, 5 million. But I think it's going to be a case where you spend a good 30, 40 million, and it's a typical Benfica summer window where you sign a lot of guys, probably. Yeah. Plus, you got a lot of guys come back on loan, but it's not for a lack of talent if we don't perform, because the talent's there.
And you see there, he says Gold would be a good addition. I think he'd be a good addition too, having watched a bit of his play. Yeah. And I think the problem is Sporting, I believe, still own a large percent of his rights.
I don't know what the story was. I don't know if it was a free transfer, or if they got like a buyback option. Or
I think they own 50%, but I don't think they can block the deal. I think we just have to pay them 50%,
whatever the value is. But, and I wouldn't be shocked if I was Sporting. Sporting is going to lose a couple pieces this year. Their president's adamant on spending some of their Champions League money up front because they know they're going to get that anyways. We're going to have heavy competition domestically for these guys. Same with Porto, right? So it might be. I don't want us to go gangbusters and also we get into a bidding war for Ryan Gold, and if the price gets ridiculous, well, it'd be nice to have him. But
I think my thought is we could get him at a better price because Farense were relegated. Yeah. But if Sporting are in there and they can start to play, that political game of jacking the price up, and it could become a game of chicken and see who veers off first. But here is another player here, Ugarte. I've heard of him as well.
Yeah.
And Grimes saying here from Famalicão. It's a good player. I've always liked Fabio Cardozo from Santa Clara. Of course, he was one of ours. I thought we were going to go get him last season. I thought he was the missing piece in our midfield. We went to get Otamendi instead. But Otamendi more than delivered this season and what he was brought in to do. And maybe the best signing of the offseason was bringing in an Otamendi, because without him, imagine how poor our attitude would be. Nobody defended us in the boardroom, on the pitch, in the media, other than Nicolas Otamendi really this season.
Yeah, he was a guy that, fairly or unfairly got a lot of criticism early on. I think so, because of Portisha, and he fucked up the first few games.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, the guy's been like amazing. He is a professional that came and did his job, and not only that, he went above and beyond, and he fought for the shirt. He defended the shirt, the way he acted. I love seeing the guy. He's a guy who has some fire in him for the club, and it's nice, man.
Yeah, Nico the GOAT. I never liked him as a player because of his Porto association going back, right? And when I'd see him play for Man City, I didn't like him. And actually, when I did an old review show of the old Benfica versus Porto game, the Eusebio game, where everyone wore Eusebio on their shirt, I was shitting on him on the podcast, right? And it came back across. I listened to that one at some point. I'm like, wow, how much things have changed. I went to my Instagram and I inboxed Nicolas Otamendi and I said, I apologize for everything I ever said about you before you came to Benfica. I said that in Spanish to him, and it did show that he saw it. But the minute we signed him, I said, okay, this makes sense. We have no steel in this team. Yeah, he played for Porto, but players in other countries, it's not that uncommon. I mean, Inter gets Juventus players and vice versa all the time. Carlos Tevez played for United and for City. Figo played for Barcelona and for Real Madrid. So did Saviola. So did a couple of other guys. It's not here. We treat it as such treason, but it happens in the game. And the way he composed himself, even when he wasn't playing well, when things weren't going well, he never went back at anybody that criticized him. Continued to say that he knew he had to prove that he was here to help, and that he believed in the club and in the project. And once we played Porto, and he was hitting Marega with forearms in the back of the head, and telling Sergio Oliveira to shut up, to stand over. I said that is what we have missed for the last 6 years. I mean,
we needed some of that fire,
because they come out so crazy against us. They come out for war against us, and we go for a stroll in the park. So it was good to see some of that on our side, even if it's one of their former players. And I mean, I want an Otamendi jersey at this point, because the guy just he embodies what I want to see out of this club.
And the club used to have that. It used to have it with Maxi Pereira. Luizão had that fight in it. We've had players that have that. Cardozo was a guy that you didn't want to screw around with Cardozo, man. He'd get to
David Luiz.
Yeah, so it's the club got soft. They need a little bit of tough love, and the fans are rightfully giving them some tough love also. And you got to toughen up, man. You can't walk around like prima donnas and things of sort. I do look forward to coming back and us connecting, like even like a preseason type show.
Yeah.
See how things are lining up, because it's such a weird crossroad where I look at a fork in the road of doom and gloom and a potential rebuilding to get us back on the right track, that it's exciting in a sense also, right?
And both are entirely possible.
Yeah, exactly.
We could be heading down the 90s again, or we could get back on track. It's just a couple of key decisions will make the difference, I think.
Cool. No, but it was fun, man.
Right.
I appreciated being on. It was a really good show. I love checking it out, and then we'll be connecting obviously a lot more sooner than later.
All right, you got your Twitter handle there on the screen. Where else can people find you on YouTube? It's Benfica After 90, right?
Yeah, Benfica After 90. That's the easiest way on YouTube. Twitter, my nonsense with m.slb. And it's I try not to get caught up with too much stupidity, but I fall easy prey to debate. And yeah, it's always fun just talking to the sport about a lot of people, and I love talking to everyone, man, with different opinions, things of sort, with the even if they support Vieta.
Yeah, exactly. I've always said, I may have opinions, but at least on my show where I can control it, I'm open to opposition. This is a platform for opposing viewpoints, opposing opinions. There's a way to express opposing opinions. Our world right now really struggles with that.
It's all or nothing on everything,
right.
which is unfortunate, right? It's very unfortunate.
It's actually a really dangerous way to go about everything. But I'm always open to hear reasons why you like V8. I just haven't heard anything other than what he did 18 years ago or 10 years ago. Nobody has given me a concrete.
And I find most people that don't like Vieira, fully, including myself, respect, and I supported him what he did. Like a lot of people, it's Benfica supported what he did, and he did great work. He's lost his way. He's lost his way for a few years, and I still don't see how he's finding his way. Like if someone can point to me and say, "Here's how he found his way," but even with this recent election, how he ran that communications, the Women's Cup way we just covered, and what we're doing next, I'm hoping he finds way, but I feel he's been lost, and he still hasn't returned, and it's we have no owner. We're controlled by the fans, and it's you're just a placeholder until we get someone else to kind of get in there and push it, right?
Right. And I mean, everything is cyclical, whether you're talking about sport, politics, business, everything has it comes to its end at some point. And I'm a big believer in term limits, no matter what the position is. I mean, there comes a point where it's time to turn a new leaf and to get new ideas, because otherwise it becomes stale. I think that's where we're at. I mean, he has his place in the history of our club. I'm never going to deny that. Okay. But, I think that he's overstayed his welcome. I would say I think the cycle is more than ended, but he's managed to extend it with, the partnerships and the alliances he has with influential people. And I think he's used Rui Costa as a pawn in this.
Rui Costa got played the most, and it's
I think he has,
and it's hurting his long-term credibility.
I believe so.
It's unfortunate, and I hope he recovers some of it. But he is going. I also get the Rui Costa's position.
Yeah, he's in a tough spot because I think he wants to be the next president, and if he gets blackballed now, he's going to lose, that voter block. So we'll see what happens. But again, thank you for joining me, Mario.
Yeah, it was a blast, man. I love chatting with you all the time. And it's we got to catch up again, man. It's been a while.
A happy birthday to your old man. Hello to Cynthia and the kids. And
awesome.
All right, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Right.
Carrega, Benfica.
Carrega.
All right. Have a good one, everybody. I'm going to play some closing credits for you and some music, and we will be out of here. I'll have a new episode coming out shortly to recap the women's match against Sporting. I know you guys have been waiting for it, so that's coming up soon. But until then, I will see you next time. Belo Benfica. We are Benfica. One day, tamo 38.